all the praise for that. I love that. I was back there on the side stage trying to hold back the tears, man, just thinking about my precious father-in-law who's went to heaven way too early in my mind at 61 years old, but founded ARC and just we established not only a scholarship in his name, we did one of my dad's name as well for the members of our church. And we get asked all the time from people, if we wanted to do something, you're giving us this conference, you're just offering it for free. And we want to do that, but we hear all the time people say, oh, if we want to do something, how do we do that? If we wanted to give something, like we don't need anything here at Highlands, I don't need anything personally. If you want to, if you feel led to give, man, just go to the highlandscollege.com website and just give whatever the Lord shows you, and we'll put it towards scholarships and bless a whole lot more young people. Amen, everybody? Sound good? Sound good? All right. And I was also noticing on that video that my face looks really fat on Zoom, so I don't think I'm ever going to do Zoom again anyway. But do you guys feel that way? How many of y'all are zoomed out? I mean, just kind of, and I want to talk a little bit about not only that, but other things, because all of us have had to change the way we have done meetings. Normally we would award these scholarships on stage like we did in the past, but now we've had to move to these Zoom type meetings. And I want to talk about change. I want to talk about the fact that whether we like it or not, we're all having to change quite a bit. And I want to answer the most asked question that we get from church planters and pastors of existing churches, and that is, how do we lead through change? So they come to grow and they see all these great ideas, and then they see how they're doing it, and then how they think now they see how it needs to be done, but now they're headed home a little bit afraid of making some of the changes, knowing how to make the changes. And I want to just put you through as much as I can through a grid, a thought process of how to lead through change. Does that sound good to everybody? And then in the next session, we're going to hear from none other than the most wonderful John Maxwell. So you want to look forward to that. And then I've got a closing message I want to bring to you. In 2000, the year 2000, Blockbuster, anybody remember Blockbuster, right? They had the opportunity to buy the Netflix idea. At that time, it was valued at $50 million. They thought, nah, that's not where this is going. This is not what we need to do. And today, Netflix is worth $4.9 billion, and Blockbuster does not exist. I think it's some kind of way that's a picture of what sometimes the church can look like. Oh, no, that's not what we need to do. And then next thing you know, we don't exist. And so change is important. Of course, you can't make every change that everybody always wants you to make. And so it gets a little difficult how to navigate what is right, what is holy and should remain forever. Like we don't touch that. And I do think, just starting off right off the bat, I think there are some things in God's economy, come on somebody, that should never change. I mean, that God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And I think sometimes, the church has a tendency to change the wrong thing. We have a tendency to change the message and leaving the methods. And I think that's actually the opposite. I don't think that methods are holy. I don't think how we do it. I don't think chairs are holy. In other words, whether you're in a pews or chair, that's not what. The windows don't make it holy. The music doesn't make it holy. God's word makes it holy. God's ways make it holy. And so I would urge you to keep the message holy, but let's put it on the table, the different methods, so that we can accomplish what God has called us to do. So I want to teach you about change. I picked up this lesson from some other leaders, so it's a little mixture of my own and some others. So if you've heard some things before and recognize it, that's how I learn and how I grow, and I love passing it along to others. Here's the first thing if you're taking notes, and that is we have to change how we think about change. Because most people, it's commonly believed that people hate change, and it's not true. People don't hate change. They hate the way we try to change them. That's what they hate. And so you gotta change your mindset about how we think about change. A lot of negative views. Oh, they're not going to want to do this. In fact, never say this phrase. Never say our people want. Now we hear this all the time. Well, I don't think our people are going to get in small groups. And like that works for your culture, but I don't think it works in our culture. Or I don't think our people are going to do outreach like that. I don't think our people. No. Never say our people want. I mean, and we have a policy here at our church that of the things that we have difficulty of leading in. We never say this phrase. We always just say this phrase instead. We haven't led them to. It's a leadership issue. Can I hear a better amen, everybody? Now, you Grantsville folks, help me out just a little bit so we can make this alive for those on the 20,000 on the other side of that lens right there in the camera. Thank you, by the way, for joining us again in week 2. And but we've got to just change our thoughts on this. Let me give you an example. In our membership class, which is step 1 of the growth track that I taught you yesterday, we just teach a membership class. We get people connected to a local church first. And one of the things that is a barrier of change for most people that are joining a church is they're not going to church thinking about growing the church. They're going to church thinking about a church for them. So they're automatically into the mindset of, I need something that's going to feed me, take care of me, love me, protect me, which, by the way, I think a church should do. Don't misunderstand. I think a church should do all those things for a person. But really, the church doesn't exist for the church. The church exists for the world. And that is a changed thought for most people. And so in our membership class, I basically teach what I taught you yesterday in the first session. I teach them the 4 things that we do. I teach them the know God, find freedom, discover purpose, and make a difference. I teach them that, and I teach them how we're going to do that. And when I get to the part where I say, and we're going to help people know God by having weekend services that lost people love to attend. And they're like, you can see they're like, okay, well, it looks pretty full already. And I go, well, it is full, but we're going to keep adding services. And in fact, if you become a member here very long, we may even ask you to give up your seat in a service time that lost people like to attend more frequently and let you go to a different service time. And you can see their eyes going, wait a minute now, I'm trying to find a church for me. But then I tell them the Joseph story. So the Joseph story of my young autistic son that got lost that I told you yesterday. If you missed that session, you need to go back and watch it. But my youngest son, Joseph, got lost. We were on vacation for about 25 minutes. We can't find this little boy. He's gone. He's gone. My son's gone. And we're scurrying looking for my son, Joseph. And I don't think I even resolved the story yesterday. We looked forever while looking for Joseph. Where is he? And finally, after about 25 grueling moments, even moments where I found a security guard leaned up against the wall, just kind of looking around with his radio and his gun, and I come up to him frantically, you got to help me find my son. I've lost my son. You got to help me find. He never took his hand outside of his pockets. He just said, well, man, did you look the last place you saw him? I'm like, brother, you don't think I'll look there? How about I take you out right? You know what I'm saying? I was irritated by his inactivity because something of value to me was missing and he couldn't get the vision of it. And I wonder sometimes what it's like to God, and when I wonder if God ever gets irritated by our inactivity because we don't have the same vision for the lost that he has for his lost kids. I wonder, and this is how I say it at the membership class. And just like you, like, oh wow, you just had an inspiring moment. Well, I tell this at our membership class. And then I said, and here's what I'd like for you to do. There are 52 Sundays a year. And I'm not asking you to invite somebody every Sunday, but I'm asking you for 2 out of the 52. 2 out of the 52 have a lost, unchurched, far from God person sitting next to you in church. Invite them. We get asked all the time, how do we grow so much? Because every membership class, for over 60,000 members now that I've gone through membership class, I've looked them in the eye, told them the Joseph story. And I asked them, I said, just give me 2 out of the 52. Or you've invited well, now this is there. Yes, we need to find Joseph. Everybody's into it now. And which is number 2 in your notes that I'd like for you to write down. And that is communicate the why behind the change. Because the why is what drives it. The why drives everything. Everything that we do. Which is why yesterday, when I was telling you, hey, know God, find freedom, discover purpose, make a difference, also backed up and gave you the why. Because heaven and hell are realities is why we want people to know God. Like, people really go to one of those 2 places. Why do we want to get people in groups? Because it's the best way to help people. If they don't tell somebody, if you don't take off the mask, you can confess all your sins to God till you're blue in the face, and you'll probably keep doing it until you share it with a trusted friend and just say, guess what's behind here? Let me let you see the real me. And now people are finding free, and you're always telling the why. Telling the why. Tell them the why behind the growth track. Because you have a gift, whether you ever use it, almost 9 out of 10 will never even find it. And if you'll come tonight to the growth track, I'll help you find what 9 out of 10 have never found. Wouldn't you love to know why God created you in the first place? Well, now, wow, now it's not an announcement to the growth track. It's like, okay, I want to be on the growth track. Because I like to have what only 1 out of every 10 people ever discover. And then wouldn't you love to lay your head down at night? Wouldn't you love to lay your head down at night, regardless of what the day was like, but lay your head down at night thinking, I can go to sleep in peace because I know I impacted somebody else's life for the good and for eternity. And it's just the why. And this is what I'm going to encourage every one of you leaders that have some stage time, especially, and of course you can do it in the meetings and every place you go. When I say preach the vision, preach the vision. So let me make it real practical for you pastors. Every time I finish my message notes for the weekend, I ask myself, where's No God? Where's Find Freedom? Where are small groups in this? Where's the growth? Is there a place that I could talk about the growth track in this? Is there a place in here where I could tell people, hey, go make a difference, impact somebody else's life? Like, preach the vision. Here's another way to say it. Preach the announcements. Don't make announcements. Preach the announcements. If they're that all fire important to do, you should be able to work them into a sermon. It's amazing to me the amount of announcements that take place that we're saying, wow, we really want you to attend this, and then we never really preach it. We never talk about it in a passionate way because you have to give them the why in order for it to actually change. Here's the third one, and that is you got to discern what needs to change. And in a minute, I'm going to give you 5 things that I'm going to suggest to you to start working on to change in your church if you want to grow. I know that's why you're really here. You wanted to grow, but you've got to really discern what needs to change, and not only what needs to change, and what needs to change first, what can wait till later, because a lot of times we have pastors go home from Grow and they try to implement everything in a day, and that's probably not the best thing for you to do, but let me give you a few thoughts on that. And then first of all, and that is don't ask the people what needs to change. So let me just tell you, don't do that. You pastor, you leader, I believe God has anointed leaders to have vision. In fact, I think the blessing that is on leaders is God gives leaders vision and he gives the people the provision. And I think if we come together, we can change the world together, by the way. But please, for heaven's sakes, don't do a survey. How many of y'all think we should do 3 songs instead of 4? No, don't do that. Don't do that. You will have a church split over that, right? In fact, they never have an opinion until you ask them for one. So just really be careful. And I'm not saying all surveys are bad. We've done a few here and there, but be really careful about what you ask the people that needs to change. I love this quote from Henry Ford, the inventor of the automobile, or one of the inventors. He says, if I would have asked people what they wanted, they would have asked for a faster horse. And so again, you don't make very much progress if you just go that route. Have some vision on the inside, and we've tried to give you vision over the past few days. And I always really don't know how to say this. Let me just say it. Can I say it just like I'm thinking it right now? Is it okay? Will y'all receive it the right way, please? And that is, even the things that you've heard at Grow, there's a tendency sometimes for pastors to go home and like, okay, I heard that. I'm gonna figure out a new way to say it other than No God, Find Freedom. We're not gonna have a growth track. We're gonna have a track of growth things. Just try anything to be original. Like this, I feel almost bad for taking a model and using it exactly. And I would actually encourage you the opposite. In fact, for the first about 10 years of this church, we're 20 years old now. I was completely a disciple before I became a teacher. I studied other churches. I went around the nation, and I always believed there was some church every church was doing something better than we were doing it. For now. Because I was going to take it, use it, improve on it, and I could take you through this place, and I could tell you see that slogan? Let me tell you where we got that from. You see that over there? We learned that from this church. You see. And I would encourage you the same, that when you're in the changing process, when you're discerning what to change, be careful of trying to be too original right off the bat. And be careful, by the way, of what I call cherry picking. In other words, you're just going to, I'll take this piece. Like, we want small groups, but I don't think we want to really change to where lost people love our Sunday services. No, you've got to do the whole thing. If you're not winning lost people to Jesus, you're going to shut down the whole thing. If you don't have small groups, people can't see. Some people just pull out the growth track. In fact, they think grow is the growth track. Oh yeah, grow's that thing where you teach the growth track. I said, no. That's just one of the 4 things. And if you try to give people a growth track saying they have a purpose and a calling, but you never help them settle their yesterdays, they can't see it. Are you following me? And so I would encourage you, just be careful. I would actually, if you feel, unless you don't feel led to do this, go home and do it exactly like this for a few years. And then begin to prove it and put your own DNA in it. And especially if you've been struggling with growing your church for a while. Is that too straightforward, everybody? Okay, I'm just trying to be real with you. I love this quote from Pastor Rick Warren. He says, imitation beats innovation every time. And I totally agree. He said, this morning when you decided to come to Grow, you didn't invent your own car. You bought a proven model. And you got in it. You didn't think, well, you know what? I can't go unless I make my own car. No, you didn't have any problem in that area. And I think the same thing too. In fact, when you get to heaven, God is not going to ask you if it was your idea. He's just going to ask you, did people get in heaven? Did you help them get free? He's not going to ask you where, no. You preached that from somebody else, and I'm sorry, those souls didn't count. No, that's not how it's going to happen. Are y'all okay, everybody? I'm just giving you principles about change before I tell you some of the things that I think you should consider changing. And let me give you one more, and that is lead the change with conviction and courage. So after you discern what needs to change, do it with some passion. Do it with some energy. In fact, even let me encourage this one other thought with, when you're leading with conviction and courage, it's going to take this one quality that I pray God's blessing over you that you have that, and that is just consistency. Because it's a consistent strategy over time that equals results. So if you've ever read the book Good to Great, it's the flywheel principle. That if you keep pulling that cord on that engine, all of a sudden it kind of takes off. But you kind of have to tug on it a little while. It never just, you don't walk up to it and it just starts. There's a and I tell you, I can tell you story after story of people where that's happened. Churches would benefit from having fewer ideas and more consistency. So they're always wandering around trying to find, now I think I'll do this model for a while. I think I'll do this model for a while. You're really not going to catch any wind in the sails. And the good news about the material we're giving to you to grow, it's not only working in thousands and thousands and thousands of churches, but in literally every part of the world. It's and not only thousands of churches, but churches of any size. We are finding this work in churches of 330,000, and we're finding this work around the world in different cultures. We know this works. And so we would encourage you again, if it resonates with you, what you're learning over these few days, and as you peruse through the website and look into all the material there, man, just decide we're going to go after this. We're going to do this with courage. I have a kind of a spiritual son. I have about 40 pastors that call me their pastor, that are senior pastors of other churches in the country, and we spend a lot of time together, and they all like to be innovative and do their own thing, but every one of them, have taken, most of them have taken what we've taught them here and implemented it. And I had one particular one, I won't tell you who it is, but I had one particular one where he kept calling me, it's just not working. The next year, it's just not working. The next year, I'm telling you, it's just not working. And I said, just keep doing it. And I make a few little tweaks here and there. All right, but just keep doing this. Keep doing this. And after just it was about 6 or 7 years. Now, I'm not trying to prophesy that to you. I think it can happen a whole lot sooner. All of a sudden, this church just completely exploded. And he would tell you to this day, it's because we stuck with it. We just stayed consistent. We led through that with courage and conviction. Can I hear a good amen, everybody? All right, here we go. So let's talk about what needs to change, okay? And I would really love for you not only to learn these, but maybe even spend some time with the Lord on these. And here's the first one, and that is, if your church is going to grow, it always has to start with you and me. So write it down this way. I'm going to need a change. So if the church is going to get better, the leaders have to get better. I don't know of a church that is growing and the pastor's not growing. It's not all about us, but we are a reflection, right, of what's happening in the church, which is what leadership is really all about. And so, thank God, I have had a lifetime of wonderful mentors. And I'm sorry for those of you who hear that and think, man, I would love to have some mentors like you have. I feel you. I don't even feel like I deserve it. I'm just incredibly blessed to have people who have looked under the hood and said, that's got to change. Well, Billy Hornsby, my father-in-law, that we honored a few moments ago with that scholarship, he was a mentor of mine. He was the most positive person I've ever met in my entire life. And I'm positive, but not in the way he is. I'm positive kind of as a principle, but it's his personality. Every day's a great day. I knew the guy for 28 years, talked to him on the phone every day for 28 years, never missed a day for 28 years. In fact, I knew him before I knew my wife, Tammy. Well, that's how Tammy and I met. He took me to lunch and said, have you ever considered my daughter, Tammy? I said, I can't say that I have. And he said, but I'd like for you to take her out. I said, man, I like you so much, I'd be happy to take her out. That's how we got together. In fact, he proposed to me. That's how it happened, all right? And so, and we were very, very close. He was literally my best friend in the entire world, and I miss him so very dearly. But I never in 28 years, and listen to me, never in 28 years saw him have a bad day, ever. Not one day. Ever. Not one day. When he was being attacked, happy. Whenever he was dying of cancer, happy. He goes, Chris, if I knew it was this much fun to help people at the end of my life like this, I'd have done it a lot sooner. And we had to set up a travel, like an agency here in our church the last 2 months of his life, because there were hundreds of people coming through that we were having to host and shuttle to and from the airport just to go have 3 minutes with Billy before he passed. I mean, it was just, and I watched him, he goes, oh, Chris, just let him keep coming. It is incredible. And I'm like, brother, you're getting ready to go to heaven. Really? Seriously? You know, and I'm over here grieving. It's like, oh, this is what. I had all these incredible mentors, and I'll never forget that he came to me one day. He goes, he just looked at me. He said, you know what? You're an amazing leader. Well, thank you. You know, and he says, but your attitude really kind of stinks. Really? Like, that's how you want to say it? You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't want to say it a little nicer than that? You know, I think your attitude kind of stinks right now for saying that. You know, and he said, well, let's work on it a little bit. And he just helped me through the process. My first sermon I ever preached, people got saved. Had even my senior pastor sitting in the front row just taking notes and just, I thought, look at him. Even my pastor is getting blessed as I deliver this word of the Lord. Brought me to lunch the next day. Found out that those notes weren't notes. Those were things that I was doing wrong. He said, we're going to work on this and work on this. And had I not been willing, come on, listen to me, pastor, leaders. If I had not been willing to change, I don't think I'd be standing right here in front of you. And I want to encourage that. I think sometimes leaders forget to be led. And they forget to have people in their life who could just say, you know what? I think if you don't believe this, your church is not going to grow. Let me just say it that way. If you don't believe that you could get better, like forget the church. Well, if our people would just invite their friends. What about you? What about you? And so can I just start right here? That if you're going to change a church, before you start going back home or start telling everybody, okay, here's what we're doing. We're doing groups. Start with yourself and ask yourself, what are some areas that you could change in? Now, years ago, I came up with a list that I built a list of things to check inside of me. It's kind of a how am I growing checklist that I'm going to pass off to you right now. I will tell you that I started the list from actually a book I read called Leading on Empty by Pastor Wayne Cordero in Hawaii. I highly recommend the book. It's fabulous. And it just helps you if you're in the season of burnout or anything like that. But he recommended, and I have done since I read the book back in 2011. So for 9 years straight, I have exercised I've done this little exercise that I'm going to pass on to you, where I check on my life and ask myself, how am I doing? And is there any room for growth? And I came up with 12 things that need to be checked for me on a monthly basis. So this is just a short little 30, 45-minute exercise at the most. And I just go through the list of 12 things that I'm getting ready to show you, and I give myself a grade on them. How did I do this past month in this area? A, B, just like a school grade. Is it an A? Did I get a D? How am I doing? In just one sentence, because I like quick things. I'm not a sit there and ponder and journal forever kind of a guy. If you are, enjoy it. But I'm not. I write one sentence on what I'm going to do this month to make it better. Just one step, nothing hard. And then if I take just 2 or 3 of these and work on them this month, I've noticed that I'm living a life of continual growth. Are you following me, everybody? So let me give you the 12 things. I'm going to put them all on the screen at the same time. And I'm not going to talk about them for a long time. And if you guys that are here, if you want to just screenshot or take a picture of the screen, that's fine. And for you guys in your notes, you'll have these. But I asked myself, how am I doing with God? I call it my faith life. Are we close? Could it get better? How am I doing with my marriage? Are we close? Could it get better? My family life, I'm talking about my kids, and for me now, my grandkids. My office life I think most leaders pastor buildings more than they pastor people. They spend too much time at the office. So just be in the office as much as you have to, but don't think the ministry is the office. It's not. So I check on my office life to make sure I'm not, because I like an office. For the first 4 years of this church, I didn't have an office because I knew I'd sit in it. So I officed out of coffee shops and built this church literally leader by leader in a coffee shop instead of an office because I knew I'd sit in there because I love to study. My favorite day of the week is my study day by myself. Praise Jesus. I get that. I love that day. But you're not going to grow a church just sitting in your study by yourself, everybody, right? So I check on my office life, my computer, or let me modernize this word, your screen time life. All of us need to get better there, I think. So that's the amount of time you spend in front of the TV or on Netflix or and watching movies or social media. I can almost safely say whatever it is, cut it in half. And you have a better life. Say amen or oh me, one of the two. All right, doesn't matter. Number 6 is my ministry life. Like really looking at, did I do ministry this week? Did I help somebody this week? My financial life, my social life. Please do not forget that one. It's very important. My attitudinal life, like how is that? That's a good one to check. My creative life, am I thinking, dreaming, writing songs, creative. For me, this is a big one. Travel life. Hadn't been so much in the past 5 months, but am I letting that get out of order? And then finally, as you can see, last on my list, my physical life, all right? I got my Quarant 15 on, now I'm calling it my COVID-19. Anyway, I've got that happening right here, but you got to make sure you're taking care of your body. That was funny, I don't care what y'all say, all right. Now, if this is overwhelming to you, and for some people, the feedback I've gotten, I'm a list person, I like this. This is just too much. That's too much to think about. I'm not going to do an exercise like this. Then let me give you a different question to ask every month. I'm just trying to help you get better. I cannot help your church get better if we don't get better. Come on, say amen. Then maybe just reduce it down to this. What one thing, if it got better, would make the biggest difference? So ask that of your church. This is a great question to ask even for your church. What one thing in our church, if that one thing got better, would make the biggest difference in our church? What one thing in my marriage, if that got better, would make a difference in my marriage? What one thing in my life, and by the way, I know what my one thing is right now. And when I work on it, it doesn't become that one thing anymore. Something else is that one thing. So that's why the question needs to be asked from time to time. That was worth the price of admission right there. If you do nothing else, especially when the admission was free. All right, everybody? Okay. Here's what needs to change. Secondly, so if I'm just coming to your church, consulting and helping you grow your church, I would ask a lot of questions of the senior leader and the leadership, the questions I just asked. Let's make sure we're growing. But here's the second thing that I would ask you, and that is about your team. So the most important part of a church ministry, in my opinion, that you can control, leader, is the teams you build. And so a lot of leaders have vision, but vision can never outpace the people you have to pull it off. So let me say it this way. I think there are too many, there's not enough attention given to the development of and the shaping of your team. And so normally when we go and consult or helping churches grow, there needs to be some change that takes place, either making them better, maybe shifting some things around. But let me give you 3 things that if you can do team-wise, I'm just talking about the leadership structure of your church, 3 things that you need to do. The first, I would have to ask you questions about the church government. And I would like, if you can, encourage you to create a church government that allows the leaders to lead. I call it giving you freedom with accountability at the same time. So, and I know I've just unpacked for some of you guys that are watching a massive big deal that you really can't even touch. And I know that, and that's why I said if possible. But I'm telling you, it's going to be difficult in many cases for churches to experience their full potential if there is a lid based on some of the leadership and governmental structures of that church. So you need to pray about it, work with it, have conversations with them. But you need a structure, in my opinion, of government. I'm talking about the government, the elders, the leaders of the church, that allows its senior pastor a lot of freedom to be a visionary leader with accountability at the same time. Here's number 2. Let me get off of that one. We used to teach an entire session in our labs, which is why I want you to come back next year, on how to build a solid church government that actually works. All right, here's another one, though, and that is you also need to create a pipeline that continually does 2 things: recruits and develops leaders. So if you want to grow your church, I would say change your team, and here's how you change your team. I never stop recruiting. I never stop developing. In fact, let me say it this way. I'm just going to make it very practical. Pastors, you guys that are here, this should be at least half of your week. Half of your week shouldn't be you doing ministry or you studying by yourself. I think half of your week should be with your team, and you should be thinking about who else needs to be here, who else can be here. We're recruiting and we're developing. You show me outside of church, in the sports world, the greatest leaders, here's what they do. They're looking for the best talent, and they're developing the ones they have. This is what they're non-stop doing. Recently, I was hosting a little round table, and we do a bunch of pastors round tables with about 20 or 30 pastors at a time. And I try to give them different experiences, and I brought them to meet Coach Nick Saban. And so they didn't know they were going to, but we put them on a bus, told them we had a surprise. They thought that they were going down to see our Tuscaloosa campus building, which is beautiful. But we took them down to Tuscaloosa, brought them on campus, took them through the museum of all those nauseating winds and all that kind of, and we brought them through this. And then in the team room was Coach Saban. He gave us 27 minutes, not 26, not 28. And I thought that was so funny because they said it that way. You have 27 minutes. Like, wow, okay. Well, let's go. And so when we had a great interview, had a great time. But when he left, I asked the person who set it up, I said, why 27? He goes, oh, the 3 minutes before he was recruiting, the 5 minutes after he was recruiting. He had a recruiting calls. He had a student coming in. I thought, boy, that's an intention. Are y'all hearing me, everybody? That's an intentional life. Everybody likes all the trophies. I'm just telling you. Everybody likes, wow, they win a lot, don't they? Yes, but 364 days a year, they're doing this. Now, I would urge you not to be quite as obsessive about it as he is, but pretty close. Seriously, this is what Jesus did. If you think about Jesus' life, he wasn't that effective with public ministry. I know that offends some. But the Bible says that of his parables, many of the crowd went away not having a clue what he just said. They said they heard the parable and they went away in amazement, wondering what it all meant. And then he pulled his disciples off to the side and explained to them the parable. Now the question is, why didn't he take the time to explain it to the crowd? Because he knew the greatest investment of his life was in the recruiting and the developing of leaders. I'm just telling you, if you want to grow your church, this becomes your main thing. So I get asked all the time, what do I look for? So let me give you some sub-points under this point. 4 of them. This is from John Maxwell, who you'll hear from in just a few minutes, everybody. He says, look for people who have what he calls potential value. So you're seeing them through the lens of not who they are, but who they could be. You see potential. Now, let me just go ahead and make this easy for you. The most potential people are younger by nature. So not to say that older person doesn't have potential, they do, but they many times won't let you shape them into that new potential like a young person will. And I have taken some major risks, good or bad. I've taken some major risks on really staffing my team with a lot of very young people. And here we are 20 years later, it looks like it paid off. Come on, somebody, right? But I would say look for potential value, and specifically I'm talking about younger people. I think you look for people that have positive value. In other words, they just brighten up the room. So today we have more than 26,000 active volunteers on our dream team. That's a logistical, it's quite a task to manage and lead that many people. Can I tell you about the person who actually built the first dream team, really up to about 12,000 people here? It was a young lady with kind of strawberry, reddish, blondish hair that came to one of our step one of the Growth Tracker membership class. And in the early days, which I highly recommend actually to today, but when we were starting the church, I thought it'd always be great to have somebody who had just joined the church the previous month to tell this month's group of people why they joined. And I had chosen her to share her little 3-minute testimony why she joined the church. Well, she came to that membership class, just happy, started mingling with all the people, high-fiving everybody, gave this incredible testimony. Everybody leaned in, everybody was engaged, everybody laughed, and everybody joined. And then we left that, and she was still around, just bouncing around, and just like, just loving the people that were there. And I went up to her and I said, "What do you do?" She goes, "Oh, I'm a landscape architect. I design people's lawns." I said, "Would you like to change the world with me? I'll hire you right now." She goes, "For what?" I said, "I don't care. I'll find something. I just want your energy in my rooms." And she built the dream team to 12,000 people with no experience, no training at all. Why? She had this. I can get a lot done. I go to big rooms. I look for people that are just kind of owning the spot, owning the room. They take responsibility for the room, I call it. Hire them. For what? I don't care. I'm telling you, you can grow your church by building the right people. Here's the third one, and that is John calls it personal value. And personal value means you don't know why, you just feel connected to them. Now, Joel Osteen's father, John Osteen, coined a phrase that I want to pass on to you that he called the divine flow. He actually wrote a little booklet that you can find. It's hard to find, but I think it's still in print. But a little booklet called The Divine Flow. And his thesis is that God builds his kingdom through a network of relationships. So he's building it through relationships. And that's why that God is a relational God. He even names himself, "I'm the God of Abraham,